Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and that's right, Poison doesn't totally suck balls. It's now pretty much confirmed after playing this build and trying out Blade Flurry, Spectral Throw, a lot of the new uniques, and a lot of the way of which you scale Poison now, which isn't through double dipping and it's through pure passive tree enhancements, as well as some of the new ailment gems, and yeah, I suppose the new uniques. All in all, Poison seems to perform pretty damn good. I'm not going to say it's as good as the pre-3.0 double dipping stuff because I don't think it can hit those same levels of craziness with double dipping, but it can be very strong, very effective. As you can see right here, I am doing Hydra, which is something Poison previously couldn't really do, so that's definitely an improvement. And this is all on a 5-link so far. These first couple of Breach Lords, as well as this Hydra, on a 5-link with some fairly mediocre, or at least modestly priced gear. We're talking about 100 C total on this character up until we got the 6th link, but in this 5-link, it is in this 5-link setup with the Dendrobate, it really doesn't cost much to do and performs pretty damn well. So I'm very surprised with how it went for what I put into it thus far. And yeah, both Hydra and Chimera are no longer poison immune, so that's pretty damn amazing that Poison can do that fairly effectively and can clear the entire game off of a setup as humble as this one. This is a Minotaur with some extra damage mods and some other sorts of shit. All of these maps were pretty crazy when I was doing these Guardians for the 5-link attack, because I want it to be more or less a realistic situation, not just the perfect map. So they're not the best examples of DPS and all that, but they are real-world examples of what you're going to be facing with these Guardians. So he's currently hitting a lot harder than he normally would. As you can see, I almost died there, and I will die at the end of this clip. But the DPS is actually pretty good, and probably the best I've had so far on this league. And considering that's coming from Poison, that is kind of a surprise. So all in all, Minotaur here, Hydra, both were fairly smooth kills, except for the, of course, inevitable death right here. But then we got into Shaper, and this is still, once again, 5-link DPS. Now, Shaper has the added benefit of basically getting Wither spammed the entire time if you set up your Wither totem correctly, and that means he takes a lot more damage from Chaos, so it's very effective to kill Shaper with Chaos and Poison scaling builds quite often. And that's where you can see this DPS going off here as well. You get the Wither stacks going, you throw down your Vile Lightning Trap, you get your Blade Flurry happening because it's a lot better than Spectral Throw, which is a clear skill in this build, and things die. This DPS here was definitely the filthiest bit of example I've had thus far, and really made me think, wow, Poison is not that shit right now. And at this point, I still had a 6-link to go, so I could not wait to see what was in store for me. The ads I thought would be a bit of a challenge for this build, but with the Wither spam, dropping a Lightning Trap, and the way Blade Flurry works, ads die pretty damn quickly, and they're not at all a problem for this Shaper fight. Now, the first Shaper fight I did drop me this fancy schmancy Starforge, which in turn gave me a whole bunch of chaos that I then used to 6-link my chest. And now this is an example of my 6-link DPS. As of now from the video, we will only be showing 6-link DPS, and that allowed me to add Void Manipulation in the Blade Flurry setup or Deadly Toxins in the Spectral Throw setup. You can see the add DPS is a lot better, Shaper DPS is better. Overall, the 6th link means 50% more damage for either of our setups, both Blade Flurry and Spectral Throw, and that makes these fights a lot easier, and it makes clearing with Spectral Throw insanely faster. So all it is just a bunch of ramp at this point. The longer you attack, the better with Poison, and the worst example of Poison right now is on this Uber-Utsiri fight with the Vials. They keep going up and down, and they start, you know, awkwardly. So all in all, the ramp becomes really hard on these guys. This is the hardest thing I faced, basically, so far with this character out of all the Guardians, Shapers, Uber-Utsiris. They still died. I did do it deathless, but man, was it not an easy fight. If I had a Shock Immune Flask, it would have made it a bit easier, and maybe if I was a bit more prepared for the way I was going to try and damage them. But they are a tough fight because you have to do so much ramp, and they sometimes don't let you. That said, they could be fairly easy, it just depends on the luck of the draw. This is the Uber Trio fight. I accidentally ran into a rain, so you see I died there, but the DPS was good and the fight should be fairly manageable most times you attack them. Now, Spectral Throw is something I wanted to do for this fight because it's probably going to be safer, but ultimately Blade Flurry probably kills bosses like twice as fast and should just be the better option. Once you get the ranged one down, the rest aren't too much of a problem. You do have to kind of avoid adds here or there because Blade Flurry range is not very insane without an increased area gem, but the damage more than makes up for it, so you just dive in every now and again, get a few little attacks off, and you are absolutely fine. Uber Itziri, not a problem at all. The ramp is a bit of an issue on the split phase. You have to dodge maybe, a couple of attacks if you don't set it up just perfectly, like you can see right here. And I am attacking the Spearad specifically because when I get on top of her, I drop a Stibnite Flask, and that makes her a lot less likely to hit me because she's blinded from the Stibnite. So there is a bit of strategy that goes into this one. You gotta be quick on your Wither Totem and Vile Lightning Trap and picking the right target, which I think should usually be the Spearad. I kind of messed it up there and got hit and nearly died, I think. So it can go smoother than that, but it's kind of up to a bit of a skill-based fight with this sort of setup. But all in all, very manageable and doable on a 5 or a 6 link, though this is the 6 link version of DPS. And then this is just a nice example of our playstyle. After we get the 6 link on a, I think, fairly tough tier 16, can't really remember the role at this point, but yeah, you can see just pretty damn fast with the whirls. We've got a lot of attack speed. The poison damage by the 6th link stage ramps up so nicely on the trash clear that it barely feels like a damage over time build. When you have a 5 link, there is a bit of waiting involved every now and again, but the clear speed is still very good on a 5 link. I was pulling 200 mil in an hour throughout most of the leveling process up to level 90. And then this is an example of 6 link DPS against Chimera. Now the boss himself dies really quickly. The adds die really quickly, though they do hit pretty damn hard, so you have to avoid them quite a lot. But the ramp, you can see, isn't a big issue here. Even though my poison lasts 7 seconds, it only takes a good 1 or 2 seconds to kill most of these things, and as well as that, the Chimera dies in a good few seconds once you get the ramp going. So most bosses, you have plenty of DPS that you don't really have to worry about the ramp and the damage over time nature of the build. It is still almost freaking front-loaded is what it feels like, and you may be wondering how we're surviving with almost no initial hit. It is largely coming from the life gain on hit of the claw itself, as well as a little bit of leech from the claw nodes and the Itziri flask. A lot of the sustain is definitely coming from our life flask and the life gain on hit, and this is just another little example of our 6-link DPS against Minotaur. It went pretty well, I'd say, there. And then one more example of tier 15 Beachhead, just what the clear looks like with Spectral Throw. Against some of the tougher monsters, they survive a little bit longer, as well as the Harbinger stuff, because they are, I think, fairly cast resistant by the looks of it. So, it takes a bit of time to kill some of this stuff, but the clear speed is still very good, and it's a fairly safe build overall, especially if you spec a bit more defensively. I initially did not do so, because I wanted to see how much damage we could get out of poison, which turns out is pretty good. So the starting point is seeing how much damage we can get, and then you build how you want, as defensive as you want. But at this point of the character and the build, it's not complete fully. We're maybe 10-15% away from our max DPS with a few gem levels and all that. But it is performing very well on the 6 link. And on the 5 link, I did all content with it as well, though it is obviously a lot smoother, getting that extra 50% DPS from the 6 link. And the playstyle for me has been very fun. I think it looks like it's probably one of the premier sort of Spectral Throw builds you can play right now, because a lot of people ask what kind of Spectral Throw build can I play at the moment in 3.0, and it's either Elemental Spectral Throw or this. The Elemental version I have not tried yet, so I don't really have one for you, but Poison Spectral Throw, still very much a thing, just not in the form of Dream Feather, or maybe even Mortem Morsu, but rather a Wasp's Nest with a Dendrobate. and all kinds of non-double dipping projectile type shit, rather weapon scaling and ailment scaling stuff. So I did want to show you where we're at gear wise and gem wise and all that just real quick as an update for the character. I hit level 90 before I did all the guardians and all that. I typically like to get to around level 90 before I start that business, and got the 6th link after about 1600 fusings, which I really brute forced with all the currency I found throughout this character. Dendrobate though is a pretty important chest for this. We have a bunch of poison duration, bunch of poison damage on it, and the lesser poison gem, which lets you have more chance to hit on poison, as well as a bit of extra chaos damage. So if you didn't have Dendrobate, you'd have to grab at least one node over here for some chance to poison, because we don't get quite 100% without that. And the whole assassin shenanigans fill out the rest of the poison, as well as some other stuff on the tree. So Dendrobate's pretty important and gets us a lot of our damage. Though at this point, I think I could easily drop Dendrobate for a 6-link Belly of the Beast and put ourselves at about 6k life if you want to do something like that instead. I wouldn't really recommend it if you're on a 5-link, but if you have a 6-link of a different chest, I think you definitely could do that and still have some good damage. But Dendrobate, fairly important, and our initial 6-link for Spectral Throw at this point is now Spectral Throw GMP. You then go Unbound Ailments, added Chaos, and after that I've been running Deadly Ailments, and then our 6th link is Vile Toxins. So this one just scales with the more you hit them, and overall it ends up working really well. And then when we go into single target mode, I just sub in Spectral Throw over Blade Flurry and Void Manipulation over GMP. And then that becomes our 6th link here, though our optimal 6th link for the Blade Flurry is putting in Melee Fizz in place of Void Manip. But if I want to keep this Spectral Throw Blade Flurry setup, the hybrid, then you have to not have a red socket. So that's why we're doing this over here. But yeah, you can see that you could even do just Spectral Throw single target with Void Manipulation there in place of GMP, but it doesn't feel quite as good as Blade Flurry. Sometimes you may need to do it. I think for Phoenix specifically for that fight, Spectral Throw feels a bit better, but for the most part, I like Blade Flurry more for single target. And if you really want to clear with Blade Flurry, you absolutely can. I do recommend you take out Unbound Ailments for increased area for your clear, and then sub that in for single target, because without the area it feels kind of shit. I did buy a Star Conjure with Lightning Golem Helm Enchant because there wasn't really any other Helm Enchants I could do that would increase my DPS, whereas this one here gives us like another 15% attack speed to a Golem whenever he's up, which is most of the time, or at least a lot of the time, and all in all that means I get 25% or close to 25% attack speed from my Golem, which is a huge benefit for this type of poison build. You can plug it into Path of Building and you'll see it's pretty damn crazy. Besides that, there's not really much else to mention. Yeah, the build went along smoothly, got some added chaos on our jewelry as much as possible, so look out for jewelry with a spare prefix so you can do that yourself. Crit multi, fizz is always a good thing on your jewelry otherwise. And the only other thing to mention is Sin's Rebirth goes a long way in this build. Not a very long way, it's something like 1.5 million damage without a Sin's Rebirth. Sin's Rebirth will add like 100k damage. So it's a good little boost over your regular Stib Knight if you really want to go that route. But it's fairly expensive and I decided not worth the cost in my build. And you may ask, why not a Witchfire Brew? That is because it's just not that useful for us. All it really does is save us the vulnerability on our reservation, which doesn't really do much, because then you can add Arctic Armor maybe, but that's about it for your reservation. You can't really do too much with your mana, and the damage over time it gains is barely anything, because throughout our tree and scaling we have something like 600% increased poison damage. So another 25 to 40 damage over time from the Witchfire is fucking nothing, and it won't really do anything. So I don't think it's too necessary to get a Witchfire unless you really are struggling on mana, because I did have to get a level 3 Enlighten attached to both Grace and Blasphemy vulnerability so that I can attack freely enough with the amount of mana I have. And Mana Sustain comes from Soul Raker over here, from our Mana Leech, gives us a bit of Life Leech as well. all in all, Poison, still pretty fucking viable. I think this could be played as a raider. This is more or less just my version of one build, but there can be many others, I think. This is a proof of concept for Poison, and it means that I think you can play Poison attack-based builds for, you know, certain spectral throws, blade flurries, reaves, flicker strikes, whatever. It's just something you can play around with different ascendancies as well, and something that will work. I'm not so sure about spell-based Poison yet, like blade flurry or blade fall, EK, all that sort of stuff. I have to play around with it and see if there's any potential there. But yeah, attack based, even bows and stuff like that, I think certainly have the potential. For now, guys, I think that's it for this video. I hope it was informative, hope it was fun to watch. Thank you very much for watching though, and see you next time.